You're listening to It Came From the Radio. This is Jennifer Lee Feldman. I'm here with Richard Spegal. He's a writer, he's a storyteller, he's a disabled veteran. So I'm just going to read from his website because he's done a lot of things. His website looks stunning, by the way, and the stories that he weaves and created look very, very interesting. So now he's weaved together magic, mystery, and the darker shades of imagination. His worlds, such as those in Eternal Nights and the Wolves and Ravens trilogy, challenge what we believe, force hard decisions, and explore how much of truth can survive in shadows. Richard served as an officer in the Pennsylvania National Guard and has a long history with the 82nd Airborne Division. I have no idea what that is. Choosing to build a family, he left active combat service and now balances life with a wife, four daughters. Oh my God, it's a lot of women, and his writing. His entry into writing started from a simple frustration. He saw adult readers being underserved in paranormal and fantasy genres. Vampires, magic, supernatural beings, but more often in formats that relied on youth-driven tropes. Agreed. So he set out to write the books that he wanted to read. Yeah, if you want something, I wanted a diet plan years ago. I created it myself. I wanted a workout plan. I created it myself, and then I taught it. You got to create it yourself if you want it done right. No one else can control your life but yourself. So he wrote books that he wanted to read, ones with dark corners, moral risk, real emotions, and stories that don't sugarcoat the consequences. I like that because I really don't like to sugarcoat anything. Some people don't like that. And when he's not penning a new chapter or plotting the next twist, Richard Spiegel draws strength from the ordinary moments, family dinners, quiet nights, research into myth and folklore. Each fragment of life becomes an echo in his stories. He believes that every hidden truth and every choice and every transformation matters, and that fiction has the power to ask what we dare not to say out loud. Which I like to say the things that people don't want to say out loud. It's very comforting to me. That's my comfort zone. Uncomfortable. So Richard Spiegel, welcome to It Came From the Radio.
Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to
Thank
be here.
you. So, okay, so vampires. First question. I've been asked a few times if I am a vampire, in all seriousness, and there are people who believe in vampires. Do you believe that vampires once existed or they do exist?
No, I believe there's a lot of things out there that we might not understand, but to me, it
Mhm.
remains firmly in the fantasy world.
Okay. How about magic?
I guess, same answer.
Same answer.
Very, very non-committal one way or the other.
And supernatural beings. Do you think that there are beings other than you and me, seemingly human beings out there?
Yeah, I feel, as I said, I feel very strongly that there are a lot of things out there we don't understand, and a big part of life is maybe trying to accept some of that.
Yeah, I mean, some people would say that women can't be understood. And you have a wife and four daughters, so that's a
Yeah.
lot of supernatural mystery right there. Women can't figure them out. I can figure them out, just fine. But I don't know. I think more like a man. So a lot of times I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Anyway, so now your website looks phenomenal, and full disclosure, I have not read your books yet. But this is a lot of work. Everything looks really great and well designed. Why do you do all this? This is a lot of work.
Well, I've been writing off and on since high school, primarily for the reasons that were in that you mentioned, in that I
Hmm.
ran out of stuff to read that I wanted to read, so I started writing my own things. It was always just kind of like a hobby, because at the end of
Hmm.
the day, you got to put food on the table and you got to work jobs and things like that. And then a couple of years ago, when my unit was deployed to Egypt back in 2022, I knew I'd have a bunch of time on my hands. Anytime you're
Hmm.
separated from your family, you end up with a lot more free time. So I decided, let me give it a try. Let me see how this whole publishing thing works out. And since then, I've been writing like crazy. I haven't really been able to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. And it's kind of like consumed my entire life, just about.
Yeah, I mean, I find that some of the best artists I've worked with are a little obsessive or a lot obsessive. And that's when those are the people who make the best music, the best movies, the best modeling, the best everything. They think about it. They wake up at 3 in the morning. Now, on this phone, I have Microsoft OneDrive. I write notes sometimes 300 times a day. I'm opening this file and adding to different notes. What do you do for notes on the go? Like if you're at the grocery store and you get an idea, what do you do?
It's just all in my head.
Hmm.
Basically, there's just like I spend more time probably living in these fantasy worlds than I do in the real world. It can be very disorienting, actually. And partially one of the reasons I was medically discharged in the first place because I'm crazy. So it's all, I mean, it's all kind of in there. And
Yeah.
the most confusing part for me is to pay attention to the book that people are talking about because the stuff in my head is stuff that a person's not going to read for maybe another 5 years because of how far down I've been writing. And then the publisher only likes to put things out like every 9 months or something like that. And then somebody wants to talk about something that they just picked up and read, and I have to remind myself, what was that book about again? Like, where in the timeline did that story fit in? And I end up talking to people and they get confused because I'm talking about something that doesn't exist yet, not realizing, oops, I'm having the wrong conversation with this person.
Right, 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 right. Okay, back to you being crazy. What's that all about? So you're just you had to leave the National Guard because you're crazy? Wait, what?
Well, I'm not supposed to, they frown on you saying it like that. But yes, um, I wasn't happy about it in the very
Uh-huh.
beginning, but I had already done my 20 years and I decided, I got my 20, what they call a 20-year letter. So I decided, I'm not going to fight these doctors. And they're right. And
Uh-huh.
leaving meant that I could spend more time, to put it bluntly, embracing the craziness
Yeah.
and going with it. There's actually, if you do research, there's a lot of manics out there in the creative field
Mhm.
that intentionally do not take their medication because it
Mhm.
stifles their creativity. They just
Yeah.
they embrace the crazy because it allows them to create things that other people can't.
That's interesting. This happens to me a lot, and that's a supernatural woo-woo thing. But right before I interview someone, and I used to do health counseling, so I used to have individual health clients come to me and I would basically do therapy or I would help them with their diet. But right before they would come, the week before, or days before, I would be thinking about things that they had problems with or things. And right before we started, one of my main thoughts was about mania and how a future guest who even has a song called, I think it's called My Manic Episode. I feel like that mania and that intensity is why she's such a good musical creator. And having a bit of mania, I feel like is kind of necessary at times to create anything really exciting. Like you have to have that excitement in you. If you want to call it mania or manic or diagnose it in the DSM-4, whatever. But I think a little bit of that. And one more thing is I have wheatgrass outside my door, and I said this in the last interview, but if you take wheatgrass and you're on MAOIs, people still are prescribed that nowadays, you actually can go into a full-on manic episode just from a little bit of wheatgrass. That's how powerful it is. And I've actually been off wheatgrass for a few months and I can feel I'm lower. But I like that wheatgrass extra kick where people are like, they think I'm on something illegal. It's like, no, man, it's wheatgrass, it's coffee, it's green tea. So how do you manage that very important and I think crucial mania that is necessary to create?
Well, years ago, most of what I dealt with was hypomania. So
Mhm.
this is long before me understanding it. But I had very productive oriented jobs. Like I was a delivery driver, so I got paid based on the amount of work I did. And that's a perfect job for a manic. All I knew is that I made the most money. It didn't occur to me that's because I'm nuts. And then it was later on when things got a lot worse that I got my diagnoses and things like that. And then when you have like a full-on manic episode, that's when you're getting into where you can't control it anymore. It's beyond
Mhm.
hypomania. It's into, and this is where like people bipolar disorder end up getting themselves into serious trouble because they have to feed their mania, and it can last for days and days.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate. On the one hand, I'm a very severe case, but on the other hand, I'm very fortunate in that my mania has always been focused on my writing. So my 90% of the time, my worst case is maybe typing for 5 days with no food or sleep, rather
Wow.
than some manics will maybe they might go out on a shopping spree and spend like $20,000 or
Right, yes.
destruction of property. Or I have been fortunate enough to not have to experience those kind of more negative impulses.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you were meant to have this because, it looks like it's really worked out well for you, at least according to the website. And this is a beautiful website. This is one of the nicest looking websites I've ever seen. I think it looks fantastic. And the
That
video
was
trailers for the books look
all the
phenomenal.
publisher. In 2022, I tried to make my own website on WordPress, and I
Uh-huh.
was very proud of it. But compared to what the publisher did, my
Yeah.
website's crap. The publisher made, I love the video trailers for each book. I love how they put all the behind the scenes stuff in there. I love the
Hmm.
look of everything, and I love not having to do it myself. I just give
Yeah.
them information and they won't really even let me have control because they basically told me I'll just screw it up. They were very
What?
polite about it. They were very polite about it. They're like, if you insist, we'll give you administrative access over your own blog, but please don't
Wow.
but please don't do it. So it's like, all right, I'll leave it to the professional.
Wow. See, that would never work for me. I'm such a control freak, and I like to control every single aspect of almost everything. If I work on other people's movies, I do makeup artistry, and I'll work as a producer, or I'm hosting this show. So the way I host the show is much different. If I was the main producer of the show, I would do things. It wouldn't be radio friendly. I'll just tell you that right now. It would not be radio friendly. So this is me trying to fit into the FCC regulations, and it is really freaking hard. It is so difficult for me. So anyway, now, your description of your stories mentions feeling deeply. That part of the human existence is feeling deeply. I'd say most days I insert a bit of escapism. I like to feel my feelings and feel deeply nowadays, but I like to escape. See that TV behind me? I like what I do called like Netflix and stuff my face. The end of almost every single day. That's just how I end the day. Put on Netflix, put on candlelight. It's beautiful. I totally just escape. Are there ways that you escape other than writing, or do you just feel all the feelings?
Not much anymore. I used to be big on reading and I was a gamer mainly for those exact reasons, just to spend time in a different world for a while. But it got to the point to where I crossed the line into my own writing that it doesn't work anymore.
Mm,
I don't remember the last book I actually read because I can't seem to read anymore. Every time I read, I'm not enjoying it. I'm too critical of the story. I'm unable to read with
wow.
enjoyment. And I keep getting sucked back into my own writing.
Hmm.
And like I said, these worlds, and I know these characters better than I know my children. I'm emotionally attached to all of them. And so the worlds I create are completely immersive because every corner of them is covered minus a little bit of emptiness I leave for the person's imagination to fill in intentionally. But I cover all of the aspects that most people either don't know how or they're afraid to, which is again why I think they're geared more towards an adult audience.
Yeah, I mean, I like that better because you don't have to do the hand holding and the sugar coating and all the BS that comes with, children stuff. No offense, I love other people's children, but I just I want the real deal. And listen, I grew up watching rated R movies when I was like 2 years old about vampires and stuff. And, whether that was good or bad, whatever. But my dad at least didn't sugarcoat stuff. He worked for the
Yeah.
CDC. He told me some real stuff that was going on in the world, from a little kid that's all coming out right now, hashtag Epstein files, whatever, hashtag pandemic. So, okay. Vampires. Love vampires. I love the look of them. I still love watching them. I think of Blade probably at least once a week. I'm a big fan of Blade and the sexiness of vampires. They're smarter than you, like Tyler Durden. They look how you want to look. They act how you want to. They move how you want to move. They're fast. Except in one movie, the guy's not that fast. I'm a big fan of the movie Night for Day, but Russ Camarda does not play your traditional fast, crazy vampire. He's kind of like sweet. So now, if you were going to cast people to play male and female vampires, who would you cast to play these vampires?
I do not know enough about who's out there in these modern times. I don't have a
Hmm.
clue. I'm very weak when it comes to visual media when adding stuff like that. I've been told my books are very cinematic because
Hmm.
for me, the movie comes first in my head and I just write down the stuff that I see. So the books themselves are very cinematic, but I don't put that kind of detailed thought like, oh, who do I know that would play this character or that character?
Yeah,
Mostly because I'm not really familiar with that kind of thing.
respect. You know what? This whole obsession with the celebrity culture, it's for the birds. I knew you were gonna say that too. I knew it. I was like, I bet you he's like, I don't care. Like I just care about my books. Like I don't care about some stupid actress. All right, I'm just gonna what about Angelina Jolie or Wesley Snipes or Brad Pitt? Would they make the deal for a vampire or no?
It's weird that you said that because years ago, no, this was long before publication. My parents are the first people that read my books, and my mother
Uh,
said something about thinking of Angelina Jolie when she thought of the female character.
yeah.
I never thought about the male character because no male actors with dark features really pop into my head. I said
Okay.
I don't know names well enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, same for me actually. I don't really have a male that stands out as a vampire for me. Yeah, I really don't have anyone. I
And
like
I
Blade.
can't
Blade is half vampire.
Well, and I can't think of any actors from other vampire things I've ever watched. Um, because Wesley Snipes is the wrong color for for the character based on where the character was born. Um,
Right.
I guess Brad Pitt's too old. These
Now
days,
nowadays.
these days he's
Tyler
pretty
Durden
old,
though, a
isn't
Tyler Durden version. We could bring it back with AI. He's a little vampire, you
he?
know. He's like he moves fast. He's stealing fat in the middle of the night and making soap out of it. What movies or books or things in life inspire you? Like what makes you be like, oh yeah, I gotta write this down or I gotta put this in my book.
I've never noticed much of an external stimuli beyond my own desire and, well, my mania. Like, I know it's all coming from me, but it's
Hmm.
coming from a part of my brain that I don't feel like I have control over.
Hmm.
So, in some ways, it doesn't feel like it comes from me.
Right.
And people ask me where my ideas come from and stuff. It's like, I don't know. And I'm not trying to be funny or stupid when I say stuff like that. Like, they're just there.
Yeah.
And and the ideas get fleshed out. I'm told the average is 14 months for a professional author to go from idea to final manuscript. And for me, it's like 5 weeks. Uh,
Whoa.
I'll flesh out an entire book in a 3 hour drive just in my head, like all the plot points, all the characters. It just happens.
Wow.
And I'm able to not crash my car while it's happening because
Yeah.
it's just completely separate from what I'm actively thinking about.
Wow. Wow, that's really interesting. And how did you learn to write? Because you were in the National Guard, so how did you figure out how to do this?
Well, okay, so that's kind of weird, but I do not have any formal training in writing.
Mm-hmm.
I just write. And
Yeah.
I've been working in this industry long enough and worked with enough editors and things like that that I've seen the stuff that I do. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just trying to answer the question. But the stuff that I do that comes naturally is stuff
Yeah.
that they teach 2 to 4 year degrees on. And
Right.
to
Right.
me,
Sure.
not only is it natural, but if I'm being blunt and honest, what writer wouldn't be able to do this because otherwise they're not a writer?
Yeah.
But they go to like lectures and classes and like
Yes.
when I first heard showing and telling voice, it makes perfect sense when it's explained to you. But I had never heard that term and I had already written 3 books. My editor's like, you have such an amazing way of blending showing and telling voice together. And I'm like, what's that mean?
What is
So
that for the listeners? For the listeners who don't know, what is showing and telling voice?
So the easiest explanation is visual media, like movies and TV shows. You show information by using the visuals or character actions versus having a character look at the screen and say blah 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 and provide you the answer in like a boring way. Now, in a book, it's hard because you could be literal and say that a book is all telling voice because it's all written, but you have third party narration, which covers the telling. Then you have the character's actions and visual descriptions. That's more of like a showing. And there's a much finer line between the two. And blending, and a lot of writers do not do much from the character perspective. The entire book is narration with the action and stuff like that. Whereas all of my characters and their scenes, it's coming from their perspective, which is why some of the and I've been criticized for this because the person criticizing didn't understand the difference that if a character does not know something, I will not list that something if it's from their perspective because the character does not possess the information. It's
Yeah,
not that
that
I
makes
forgot,
sense.
the character doesn't know.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. And also, I've heard this from, I'm not going to say who it is, but there was a friend of mine who did a lot of really cool writing and art. And I think I mentioned to her about some site that listed books to read, because it is necessary, I think, at some point in life to probably read other people's books. Or some people say the Bible, some people say the Bible's useless, some say they live by it. I wrote a health guidebook, but reading a few books has taught me some things in life. So I think I suggested, and she said, I don't read. I get all of my information from God. And she said she doesn't read, but she writes books, and so there are people out there that say they're getting their information from source or from God or from spirits or aliens, and they refuse to read, and they even think it's a bad idea to read. What do you think about that?
I can kind of see what a person might be saying there. They're just saying it in a very offensive way. Um, like I said, I used to read books, and I would be immersed in books, and I would find them phenomenally entertaining. I will read the same book now, and I'll hate it because all I do is pick out all the mistakes. And I suppose a person could be afraid that, if you're reading a bunch of subpar work, maybe you're going to be a subpar author. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the most, it's just the way it is. A lot of the most famous writers out there in our current day also hold records for making the most mistakes. Like J.K. Rowling is probably the single most successful writer of the 21st century.
Yeah.
Her books, she needed a better editor. Her
Ah.
books, that I loved them. The first time I read Harry Potter, I enjoyed it a lot more than I was admitting, being a grown up and everything. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed it. But when you actually stop and think and you read those books critically, the entire things are nothing but plot holes that make no sense. She was a
Really?
very creative individual that did not have a good editor because there are so many things that should have been done in a different way and ruined the story in hundreds of ways, but
Hmm.
they were geared for kids. They were very creative. They were very enjoyable. So if you're reading it with the right frame of mind, it's fantastic.
Right.
But if you're gonna read it like it, okay, I'm not sure what I can say out loud. If you're gonna read it like, let's just say, a critically mean person, you're gonna see
Huh?
nothing. You're gonna see nothing but errors.
Interesting. Well, maybe she learned from like porn because I actually don't watch porn, but I'm almost 42. I've seen it. And there's a lot of plot holes and the story doesn't really matter, but it's just a bunch of things happening. So maybe that's where she gets her inspiration. On that ridiculous note, we're over time. So please
Okay.
give our listeners your final thought and where to find you.
Well, my website, the one we've been talking about, is richardspiegel.com. As you mentioned, it's a phenomenal site. It's got a lot of content in it, all like the buy links and things. Of course, Amazon, that's pretty simple to just search. Also, I'm on Instagram at Richard Spiegel Books. I'm not very good with Instagram. That gets managed for me, but there's a bunch of content on there too.
Okay. We're like the opposite that way. I can't let anyone manage anything about me. I can't even I've learned to delegate grocery shopping a little, and that's it. Everything else, even cleaning my own house, I can't do it. But anyway, that was useless information, and that happens a lot of times. That's what happens when I don't work out and wake up and just have coffee and go right into the interview. You hear my nonsense rambling. So for more nonsense ramblings, you can tune back into It Came From the Radio. And we're going to wrap this up. So back to the studio with more with Mark Torres.